let me continue with where we left off. So anyway, we have just done the one on. So to prove my point again is, since there's just so many lies and so much fabrication that is done, we need to be very, very careful about the authenticity of our records. I always joke to my friends, I always, wear expensive watch. You see my Rolex watch, R-O-L-E-X, Rolex, you see that? Okay, I bought it in Shenzhen for $20 US. My point is that you can fake anything. You go to China, you go to these museums, they have all these exhibits to prove all kinds of things, okay? My goodness, you can go to Shenzhen and order these things for, in batches, okay? These things can't be fake, okay? So actually the reason why I've handed out, I'm sorry, can I borrow this sheet?
Please, please.
The reason why I've handed out this is for you to take it out right now and compare it with this, okay? So take this thing out and compare that with this. May I have a copy of that myself? Thank you. And so, pardon me, I'm very disorganized. Where's my laser point? Oh, here. This one is 1461, right? The one that you have, the map that you're holding, that is 1461. As I said earlier, Ming Dynasty spans through 267 years, 276 years, I'm sorry. And so territories change. So this is the 1600 edition, okay, where they revised it. And also to prove my point, I purposely get it from the Bavarian National Library of Germany. This is the Bavarian National Library, East Asia Digital Collection, okay? In other words, nobody can fake these things, okay? Because if the PLC wants to fake this, people are going to produce this copy, okay, from a German library and say, well, so you can see this is very, very authentic, okay? And you can compare this with this. It really shows you the same thing. And that is this Tibet over here is shown under a very different convention compared with the internal places like the capital city and Nanjing and so forth, okay? Just to make a minor point over here. So this is to summarize what we have looked at so far. Remember, I started out by saying that my original question is this: was Tibet part of the Ming Empire according to the PLC? Was Tibet part of the Ming Empire according to the Qing Dynasty government? And then was Tibet part of the Ming Empire according to the Ming government? Okay? So you have now the three documents over here. You have the PRC document, you have the Qing document, and then you have the Ming document. And you can see that the Qing document and the Ming document, they are consistent with each other. They basically agree with each other. And there's northern Thailand and Laos, they're inside the Ming Empire, right? And then Tibet is outside. Yellow means within China, and white means outside China. So the yellow is Thailand over here and Thailand over here. And then the Tibet, okay, in Qing is listed under Western lands, and then in the Ming document is listed under foreigners, okay, YE, okay? And you can see that the PLC document is just the opposite. Tibet moves from here to here, but then the Laos and the northern Thailand, Burma, they move from here to there. Again, I'm not saying who is right and who is wrong, but basically I'm trying to tell you that well, as to whether Tibet belongs to the Ming Empire, the Ming Emperor and the Qing Dynasty, they obviously, are sort of consistent with each other, and they disagree with the PLC. Who do you think is more qualified to say, something about the Ming territories? The Ming emperors or the PLC government? That's up to you to decide. And these are the most authoritative documents of each era or dynasty. Okay, there's no question about it. The Chinese agree with this, that's non-controversial. So we can see now what the PRC says about the book. Okay, it says that blah, 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 blah is one of the major best achievements, and then the Hon Shiang is a serious and meticulous scholar. He never uses blah, 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 and so forth. So again, you can decide on sort of how sort of credible those things are. Anyway, in my attempt to answer the question that was raised by, I think, you, right, about, okay, so actually there are other government documents, okay, that actually reflect the same thing. We just don't have time to go through that, okay? That's the reason why it's important to know something about Chinese historiography, and that when you want to look up a topic, who is the most authoritative author, or which book is the most authoritative book? And then we have looked at some of the most authoritative ones, but there are others that are equally authoritative that are governmental. But we are going to move to the next group. The next group is a scholastic group, okay? Because you can see, if you follow the Chinese Communist way of thinking, which is a cultural revolution way, and that is, all these rulers and all these imperial documents are just bad. And okay, let's look at the scholars, okay? And again, there are a whole bunch. I'm going to look at the one that is, again, one of the most prestigious, okay? It's called Guang Yu Tu, okay? Maps for Vast Territory. And again, I'm going to look at Baidu and see what they say about this book, okay? Emma is an atlas published in our country during the Ming Dynasty and enjoyed wide circulation and enormous influence. Hon Shiang, which is the author, okay, was ranked first in the National Superior Level Civil Service Examination, 状元, for those of you who know Mandarin, okay? In 1529, was appointed a court author. After more than 10 years of devotion, he completed MVT in 1541. Because of the accuracy, please note the word accuracy, okay? This is a very important word. Before wide availability, MVT became the foundation reference for many subsequent map preparation projects in Ming Dynasty and beyond. Mr. Law invented blah, 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 and so forth. MVT is an extremely valuable variable. Again, basically, it's sort of, is held in high esteem. And then, of course, these are examples, okay, of, again, the important thing is to, first of all, decide, why should I look at this book? What's so grand about the book? I'm showing you this is really a grand book, okay? Because and so you can see these are the journals, okay, in China that published, okay, in 1991, talking about this book, and says, Hon Shiang was not only an outstanding cartographer, blah, 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 and the Italian Jesuit Martini was hailed by Westerners as the father of Chinese geographic science, but in fact, Martini stated in the preface of his atlas that he drew most of his material from this book, okay, Laws, okay? It shows that it's impossible to overestimate MVT's influence in shaping global geographic perspective and advancing international cartography. This one, okay, another PRC journal article says MVT is an excellent work that extended tradition and opened up future of nations' geographic cartographic science. Again, in other words, if you go to the standard databases that are operated by the PRC, there are just hundreds of these entries, okay, praising, sort of the stature and the accuracy and the authority of this book, okay? So let's see what this book says, okay? This is not a governmental book. This is a scholastic book, okay? Again, I'm giving you some addition. I will not get into technicality again because we need to talk about the authenticity, okay? Even though you say that the book is a good book or authoritative book, how do you know that this is the accurate version? How do you know it's a genuine version? And I'm saying that, okay, you have all these editions, some of them, of course, again, produced by the PRC, and they're recognized by the PRC, including this one is the original copy of the Ming book, okay, that was kept in the library, and then now you can get photocopy images of that, okay? So again, there's no question that we are getting the real thing. So what does the real thing say? MVT consists of 2 scrolls, scroll 1 and scroll 2, okay, each consisting of about 100 pages. So let's look at scroll 1. Sheet 2, okay, at the very beginning of scroll 1, at the very beginning of a book, they start, because it's a geography book, right? They start out by telling you about the Chinese territory. The territory of Great Ming. Eastward, it starts from Korea. Westward, it reaches Fort Jiayu, I'll show you where that is afterwards, okay? And then the others are not important, okay? But it encompasses 2 capital cities and 13 provinces. I've already shown you what the 13 provinces are, okay? And they do not include Tibet. But what is more interesting is this part. Westward, it reaches Jiayi, okay? This is Jiayuguan, okay? So Luo Hongxian is saying that westward, again, it's in a bragging tone. We are so big, okay, they be as far west as this part. This is Tibet, of course, TAR, okay? And so actually it doesn't really quite touch even the eastern boundary of Tibet over here. So anyway, now again, I want to remind you once more, okay, please remember this place, Xingshu Lake, okay, somewhere in Qinghai, okay, because this is going to come up in a few minutes. So anyway, then it shows a map, okay? And that is, again, in the first 2 sheets of the book, okay, after telling you the western limit of the Ming Empire. This is a map. I know it's too small for you. So this is Xingshu Lake, okay? This is the correct position of TAR is here. TAR is so irrelevant that it's actually outside the map. In other words, I don't even want to talk about you. You're so irrelevant that you're actually outside. The western end is Xingshu Lake. And I again want to remind you what Xingshu Lake is. Okay, let me show this thing. Remember? That's Xingshu Lake. In other words, the map covers up to about over here and that end, because beyond that it's just totally irrelevant. But does it mean that this side is China? No, that's not what it says either, because actually, you see, the reason why Xingshu Lake is shown in many of the Chinese maps is because the Chinese believe that Xingshu Lake is the source of the Yellow River. Okay? So because of that, it's a very important landmark. So that's the reason why the Chinese are interested in it. But the Ming Chinese didn't think that Xingshu Lake was part of the Ming Empire. So it was included in the map, but actually, okay, I'll show you the boundary later on. The boundary line isn't very clear. But it's interesting for them to show that, you see, this is Xingshu Lake, okay? The correct Tibet is over here, and then they show the Wusizang over here, okay? This is Wusi, and these are the Dongbu Han, Hanhu, and this one is Doganci, Wusizang. And these are all standard terms for Tibetan polities, okay? These are names are given, of course, by the Ming Chinese. And so they are putting Wusizang, which is actually Tibet, the Lhasa and that area, okay, is actually putting it east of Xingshu Lake, whereas the correct position is considered as totally irrelevant, okay? So again, to make sure that you understand what it means that the map stops here, and then they're putting Wusizang, Tibet over here. Okay, that's what it is. Remember, just now we already said that the Chinese all agree that this is the most authoritative map. It's very high. Remember, I asked you to remember the word accuracy. It's considered as a very accurate map. It's accurate. It's just inaccurate for that region because actually the Ming Chinese couldn't care less who these people were and where they were. Okay, I mean, it's just considered, it's just so irrelevant that they just put those over here. Okay, so actually, there are really 2 ways of looking at it. One way is that you don't know where that place is. How can you possibly control or govern the place? Okay, but secondly, even if you say that Wusizang was part of China, you're talking about this Wusizang and not this one. Okay, and so basically what it is. And the interpretation is really up to you to determine. Again, I'm just showing you that that's how the map appears. The interpretation differs. Actually, my interpretation, I'll tell that, and that's subjective. So far, I've tried to present objective facts. But right now, I'm going to stick my neck out and give you a subjective interpretation. My subjective interpretation actually is this, is that there's this vast area that the Chinese know that they are inhabited and controlled by this whole bunch of Tibetans, okay? And then they start from about here. And the western end, they have no idea and they couldn't care less. So they don't show this, they don't show this. And when they put the Wusizhang over here, it means that they know that the Tibetans' influence start about over here and to the west of here. But that's just my subjective interpretation. And I reached a subjective interpretation not from just looking at this map. Remember, I've looked at dozens of these maps, okay? I'm just showing you one of those. Okay. And again, this is to repeat the consistent statement of all these Ming and Qing dynasty documents on Ming geography, is that, again, they say that under Yunnan, it was Burma and Laos, okay? So they're very consistent, okay? All these dozens of books, okay, they all show two things. Burma, Laos, a part of the Yunnan province, which is part of China. Tibet was just totally out, okay? So now scroll 2 has a bunch of other things. I'm just going to look at 3 things over here. They show a map of Western lands, and they show an overall map of China and foreigners, and they show a list of foreigners. There are other things which, okay, we don't have time to look at all of those. But let's look at the first one, the map of Western lands. And the map of Western land is actually, you know, Western lands means things that are west of China. And so this one, you can see the boundary. This is the boundary. This is the boundary line. This is the boundary line of the Ming Empire. And you can see that consistent with the earlier statement, Burma is shown within the boundary line. Okay, Laos is shown within the boundary line. Vietnam is shown outside the boundary line. Okay, but this is the boundary line. And then outside the boundary line, you have Duogansi, and then you have Wusizhang. Okay, Wusizhang is very close to the boundary, but it's outside the boundary. Okay, so look at that. This is inside Burma and Laos. Vietnam is outside, and then this. But again, it's just like what they're saying. Really, is that they're outside, but I don't know exactly where they're outside. And then again, the correct TR position is left blank because they just don't know enough to put any label there. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering where the Great Wall of China comes in a map like this.
Okay. The Great Wall is over here. It's not shown in this map because this map is western. Okay? So the Great Wall is here.
Because it was keeping out the Western barbarians.
No, the Great Wall is for the northern barbarians. They were the northern ones. The Great Wall is against the Mongolians up here. So that's why it's not shown over here. Incidentally, this place, this shows India. Okay, this is South India. This is there. So the India is labeled. It's interesting to show that India, the South India, North India, they're labeled over here, but Tibet is not labeled. And then remember, we say that we want to look at 3 things. So we have looked at the map of Western lands. So let's look at the overall map of China and foreigners. Okay. So where is China and where are the foreigners? Okay. So this is shown over here. And again, you can see over here, that's the boundary line, the border of Ming Empire. The border of Ming Empire over here. Okay, the border of Ming Empire over here. And then over here, this is Vietnam, which is just outside the border. And then over here, the border of the Ming Empire. And then these things basically says that there are a whole bunch of these Tibetans over here. So their idea of Tibetan are the Tibetans that are sort of outside the area, still in the area of Xingshu High, Xingshu Lake, which is in Qinghai. Again, it repeats the same thing. This is even more amusing. They show the correct of TR as actually half of it would be in the ocean. Okay. And then, of course, the last one. Remember I said that I want to look at 3 things. The map, we look at the map, and the list of foreigners, okay? And the list of foreigners is a table in the tabular form. So that's how they classify, how this book classifies the foreigners. They have Eastern foreigners, Southeastern foreigners, blah, blah, blah. And then the eastern foreigners, Dongyi, okay, is Korea. And then the southern foreigners, Nanyi, will be Java, which is Indonesia, Vietnam, Malacca, and Malaysia, okay, and so forth. And then, of course, the western foreigners, these are Tibetans. And again, you see, they do put down these honorific titles. And they recognize, yeah, the Ming government gave them these titles, but they also recognize that giving them titles doesn't make them part of China, which, of course, is common sense if you think about it. Just because you give me an honorific title, I'm going to give you my family and my house. I mean, it's just common sense if you think about it. So anyway. So this is the original document. For those of you who can read Chinese, you can see that that's what it says over here. Xi, okay, Western foreigners, and then these are the Tibetans, okay, Tibetans, and you have all these people who have gotten, these are chieftains, okay, and they're given titles, okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about titles later on. Anyway, then these are Nepal, and then Samarkand, and which of course, as I've said, is in Uzbekistan today. So these are a whole bunch of other maps, okay, and we don't have time to go through that, but okay, so to answer your question about Great Wall, now the Great Wall is shown. This is where the Great Wall is. Okay, this is the Great Wall. Okay, this is the Great Wall. Okay, this is Xingshu Lake. Okay, now this time it shows that the Tibetans is over here, which is just next to Xingshu Lake, which is still in Qinghai province, which is still, you know what I mean, which is still quite eastward of, which is Tibet is over here. The real Tibet is over here. They showed over here, and this is the Qinghai area. And this is the boundary. The boundary is very clear, okay? This is the boundary, okay? This is the boundary over here, okay? So that's, again, each of these books in my book that's going to come out next month in Chinese, okay? I give you proof that these are authoritative books. I'm not just picking any dumb book, but these are all authoritative books. So this is one example. These are all scholastic, considered scholastic book. This is one. Again, the Great Wall is here. The Great Wall is here. This is Xingshu Lake, and then this is the Tibet. I'm sorry, the Tibetans, not Tibet. The Tibetans. This schematic is even clearer. Okay, they draw a circle, and then they actually show you where these foreigners are. In other words, China is surrounded by all these different foreigners. Okay, and this is the eastern part of Qinghai. This is Xining. I remember just now I asked you to remember the place Xining, which is at the eastern border of Qinghai province. And this Shongpan is central Sichuan. Okay, so central Sichuan is the boundary, and then outside it, it states very clearly the Tibetans are here, which is of course outside the circle. So there are, I mean, there are just dozens of books. Okay, so I have examined more than 100, okay, of these books, and I haven't found a single one. That's to address your question right now. Is that I haven't found a single one that says that or indicates that would give the reader an impression that Tibet was part of the Ming Empire. And I'm not saying that I can prove that there is none. All I'm saying is that I haven't found one, but you have found one. Why don't you show me? And the PLC, with all its resources, has never been able to show in the propaganda any map to show that. Okay, if I were a patriotic Chinese, I would then say, oh, that doesn't count either. Because as you know, under the Chinese system, they say that all these scholars are what you call the stinking ninth class. Okay, they divide the Chinese people into 9 classes, and the stinking ninth class would be the intellectuals or scholars. So these don't count either, okay? So let's look at the populistic, the real, what you call the working people, the proletarian class, okay? What kind of books do they read, okay? Now, okay, I'm going to skip this part, okay? These are populistic references. They are called Lei Su. And Lei Su, okay? Lei Su, okay? Actually, basically, encyclopedias. The Chinese had these encyclopedias since the Wei Jing dynasty, which is like, 600 AD and so forth, okay? As early as 600, 700 AD, they were publishing all kinds of encyclopedias for popular use. And then, of course, we will be only talking about the encyclopedias that are published in the Ming Dynasty. And we are limited ourselves to those encyclopedias that have 2 sections, the geography of China section and the foreign entity section, so that we can see where they put Tibet. Do they put it here or they put it there? Allow me to digress for a bit, again, just to address your question, and that is, talking about this Tibet-China thing is actually very depressing. So let's talk about something that's a little bit lighter. So let's look at this example of a Lei Su of an encyclopedia. This is the table of contents of this particular encyclopedia, okay? So this particular encyclopedia, the title of which is given over here, it has all these different scores, a different section, and it has a geography section, 地语门, okay? And then there's a section of various aliens. But then there are many other sections, astronomy, okay, on letters, okay, on weddings, okay, on funerals, okay? It's not about Tibet. It's not a book about Tibet. It's a book about all kinds of things, okay? And then, of course, to show you that this is a populist text reference book, this is the next page, okay? This is the tables of content. Goes from scroll 1 to scroll 2 and then to scroll 16. And then down there is scroll 16. And this one is wind and moon section. Anybody knows what the wind and moon section is? Those of you who know Chinese? As a euphemism for sexual matters, okay? And I'll give you an example. I want to prove that this book is a populist book. It's not a scholastic book. It's not a serious governmental book. In case you want to be a proletariat, this is about as proletarian as you can get, because if you look at the wind and moon section, which is not about astronomy and meteorology, but it's about sexual matters, okay? This is a section on convenient collection of love letters. It tells you how to write love letters. And the first sample love letter is a letter to a favorite prostitute. In those days, you don't write love letters to your girlfriend. You certainly don't write love letters to your wife. Okay, you write letters to your favorite prostitute. Okay, and then you can, of course, copy that and then change some words or whatever. Okay. China is one of the few, in fact, I think it is the only major cultures of the world that I know of where there was actually no taboo against homosexuals, okay? So this is a reply letter from a young homosexual partner. Again, it's a form letter. You can use that, okay, and send it to your homosexual partner, okay? This one is a wonderful recipe for a romantic nuptial suite. It's basically a recipe for aphrodisiac, okay? Now, I'm not saying that any of the members of my august audience is interested in these things, okay? I just want to show you that this is a very populist book. I mean, it covers all kinds of topics, okay? It's not trying, it's no political hidden agenda, okay? And a book like that, how does it treat Tibet? Because remember, there are two sections, one on China geography, one on foreigners, okay? So, I've looked at actually dozens of those. I have only space for so many rows. So over here, I'm showing you 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Okay, they're actually, again, there are dozens of these. Again, there are original copy Ming Dynasty editions of these are available from libraries in Hong Kong and in Japan, in China, and so forth. And of course, they are reprinted. And they're reprinted also by the mainland Chinese scholars. Okay, so again, there's no faking. Okay, you can see that. And just now we were talking about this one. Okay, this is the one that was showing you. Okay, with the recipe of a nuptial suite and whatever. But then there are others. Okay, again, it's consistent. Number 1 is Beijing. Number 2 is Nanjing. Number 3 is Shanxi. The 13. You see, the Ming Dynasty, the empire consists of 13 provinces and the 2 capital cities. So there are 15 altogether. In each of the 15, it's all yes. And then Tibet consistently is no, okay? Nobody includes Tibet, okay? And that's in the China section. And then, of course, this is from another book, okay? Another one of those, okay? And then it shows you a whole bunch of foreign countries, okay? Laos is always, see, Laos is borderline. So over here, in some places, in some books, Laos is shown as part of China, and over here is listed as a foreign country, okay? And then this is Tibet, okay? And this is, there are preceding pages which I'm not showing you. So this is number 27, La Wo Guo, okay? And then over here, Tu Bo Guo, okay? It's number 31, and India country is over here, okay? And then a whole bunch of others, okay? But before I move on, it's interesting, okay? it's interesting because one of the major arguments of the PRC is that nobody has recognized Tibet as a country ever, okay? And those of you who know a little bit about Chinese is that in many situations, the word guo the word country is omitted, okay? When we talk about Spain, for example, we say 西班牙, we never say 西班牙国, okay? In some cases, like 美国, America, then we do say guo. But over here, they actually took pains in mentioning the word guo over here. Okay, 老挝国, and then 吐蕃国, they specifically use the word guo, okay? In other words, it's actually interesting that the Chinese are actually the ones that specifically call it a guo. And then, of course, this is Tianzhu guo, which is like India country, okay? So these are all sort of. And then if you look at the way they deal with these, for these different books, you can see that in the alien section, okay, this book would list 118. The two books that we have seen, they will list all these, 135 countries. If you look at the ranking, you see that they divide these Tibetan regions into two types, okay? The Sifan, which is the closer to the Chinese boundary, and Tupor would be more like today's, what the Kashak government or the Lhasa area. Okay? And you can see that they always rank below Japan and Korea. Again, the Chinese would never accept today the Japanese as their brothers or their sort of whatever you call it, the compatriots, okay? But you can see that Japan, the average ranking, okay, they rank quite high. Of course, the closest country is Korea, okay? But then if you look at Japan, okay, it ranks always higher. And the average ranking, as you can see, this is ranked second. Japan is ranked 12. And the average ranking of all these is. So Tibet not only is a foreign country, again, a country specifically, but it's a country that's ranked way below Japan. So that, I hope, answers your question right now, is that there's just an abundance of these books, either governmental books, scholarly books, or these books that tell you how to write love letters to your homosexual partners, okay? They all show the same thing. There's no way, to my knowledge, there's no way that any Ming Dynasty person, if they read a Chinese book, they'll ever get an impression that Tibet was part of China, okay? So, we have talked about one aspect of it. There are many other aspects like taxation, whatever. We wouldn't have time to do it. I hope you would learn Chinese and read my book. I'm just joking. Okay? But my book covers all the other things, like, what about taxation? What about the other things, okay? So let's go on to individual events, okay? Because what we have talked about, taxation and stuff like that, is just a system. What about, system is what you write in the books, okay? In other words, even if I claim that I have collected taxes from you in my books, does it mean that I've actually done so? That's again another question. Okay, so let's look at this story, okay? Emperor Wuzong, okay? And see what it reveals. And that is because the PRC's argument, very much like I asked you to prove your American citizenship, you say, oh, I cannot produce my passport, but I have something better. I have my photograph with Donald Trump, okay? And you know that, well, wait a minute, if you can't produce a passport, you want to show me a photograph of Donald Trump, there's something wrong with you. You see, the PRC, instead of showing people that they were collecting taxes or whatever, or having census in Tibet, they say that, well, we confer honorific titles on these things, okay? On these religious leaders, okay? And then so forth, okay? So this is the official statement of the PRC. That's the justification, okay? That is from the white paper. Remember, we say that the white paper from the State Department, you can look at that. This is the original text, okay? So anyway, let's see how valid that argument is by looking at just one of the hundreds of accounts as recorded. Again, that's the reason why you need to know something about historiography. And over here is that we are talking about, again, coming back from Ming history, okay? Ming history describes this event. It is also recorded in the veritable records. And these are, again, unquestionable credibility and authority. So this is sort of a 90% straight translation of the event according to the Ming history. Okay, so let me go through that. This is a Karmapa, by the way. Okay, this is the Grand Precious Religious King. So the fourth Karmapa went to Beijing and got a lot of gifts from the Ming Emperor. And then some years later, well, actually not some years later, it's 100 years later. 100 years later, the 8th Karmapa. Tribute submitted in 1506 and again in 1515. At the time of the emperor, was misled by his attendants who told him that about Wu Si Zhang Mang, which is this Karmapa, the 8th, that could see through 3 incarnations and was hailed as a living Buddha by people in the monk's country. Again, the word country is used, okay? The emperor wanted to meet him and ordered the eunuch Liu Yun to be the ambassador to invite the monk. And then the advice of the prime minister, the others, was that, wait a minute, okay? Although these are direct translation, okay, from the official history of China. And this is a quotation from the prime minister. Although the earlier emperor of our dynasties have sent envoys there, but that's because the Chinese world has been conquered, and it was done in order to guide and educate the ignorant and to control, comfort the faraway places. After we have enjoyed peace, the succeeding emperors have only bestowed presents to these Tibetans because they came to seek audience with the emperor, but we have never carelessly abused our diplomats by sending them to that remote place. Please note the tone and then the choice of words over here, okay? And they are not even going to make the diplomats suffer, okay? They don't even want to send the diplomats, let alone, governing officers and so forth. I say that this eunuch that you're asking him to do this was asking for a very large amount of resources and nearly 100 large ships. It will cause hardship to a government and our people, okay? Furthermore, after leaving our border at Tianquan, I'll show you where that place is, okay, afterwards. Tianquan, 6 barbarians, which is in today's central Sichuan. There will be several tens of thousands of miles more to. So again, this prime minister is stating that our border is at this place. This is our border, okay? And then after we leave our border, there's no station, and then who is going to protect us? We have no provisions and so forth, okay? If we send people there, it'll lower the stature of China. The whole idea is totally unacceptable. We are subordinates boycotting. This prime minister is telling you, I am going to boycott you. Basically, it says that we as subordinates regret that we will not perform the associated documentation work for your majesty. The emperor rejected the advice, even though other important relevant officials also objected vehemently. Actually, in the original text, there's a listing of all the other important officials that objected to it. Okay? This is where Tianquan you find this. Okay? So the border is over here, which is again in the middle of Sichuan. Okay? That's what's stated. Okay. Anyway, so the emperor starts preparing the gift for this living Buddha. Strings of pearls, blah, 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 completely depleted the gold holdings of the imperial palace. They used all the gold in the imperial palace to make gifts for this living Buddha, okay? And then costing tens of thousands of taels of silver was made, and then a tea, and then salt, whatever. And then told Li Yuan that I'll give you 10 years. In other words, the emperor has no idea where this guy is, okay, where Tibet is, okay? So you go spend 10 years, okay, going to God knows where, okay? It's like sending Columbus, okay, to look for the New World. When Li Yuan's fleet reached Shandong, it blocked the central government's fleet of taxation ships. They were used to transport staples from southern China. So you're talking about a huge undertaking, okay? The emperor spent a lot of time just to try to bring this Tibetan monk, okay, which apparently had, or rather his ancestors, the preceding Karmapa, had received these honorific titles from the Ming emperor, which means that supposedly they should be somewhat obedient to the Ming emperors, right? So anyway, so actually the trip goes like that, you see. This is Beijing, okay? From Beijing, it goes into Shandong. There's a canal over here, and it goes down, and then it goes to the Yangtze River, and then eventually reach Chengdu, okay, which we haven't gotten to yet in the article. I mean the text I'll get. And after Chengdu, they make preparation, and then they enter over here, and then they came to Lhasa. And after Karmapa is a seat to the monastery somewhere over here. Okay? So anyway, that's the entire trip. But let's see how it was described. So after entering the Yangtze River, the ships were too big, the entourage switched to a procession of smaller boats which stretched for over 100 kilometers. Okay, these ships they're moving all these gifts and all these whatever for going to Tibet. After reaching Chengdu, which is what I showed you just now, which is the Sichuan province, the entourage requisitioned from local government 10,000 kilograms of staples, blah, 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 and so forth. And then, of course, they took a lot of things. And then they wanted also the Liu Yun, okay, the eunuch, wanted another 200,000 taels of silver for the trip to Tibet. And the local government, the provincial government of Sichuan, got to reduce it to 130,000 taels of silver. 200,000 taels of silver was about the annual budget of the entire province. So basically, this guy says, okay, you province of Sichuan, give me more than half of your annual budget so that we can make gifts, okay, and whatever, and go and invite this monk. Okay, so the workers then labored day and night to make the required items. After staying Chengdu for more than a year, okay, to make all the preparations, they resumed the journey and then accompanied by 10 military officers, 1,000 soldiers. This is the only time the Ming Emperor sent troops into Tibet, not for the purpose of making war with the Tibetans, but for the purpose of inviting this living Buddha, this monk, to Beijing, okay? 10 months later, they arrived at the monks' region, the so-called living, okay, this is straight translation, okay? I'm not trying to insult anybody, okay? So this is written by the Mandarins in China. They don't have very much respect for Tibetan monks, okay? So they say, the so-called living Buddha was worried that a Chinese man harmed and hid himself. This angered the Chinese military and planned to use force. The barbarians, again, it's straight translation, okay? The barbarians attacked them at night, seizing all the treasures and weapons. 2 officers and several hundred soldiers died, and an additional half of the number were wounded. Okay? Liu Yun escaped using a fast horse, but was able to save himself and nothing else. After reaching Chengdu, he issued a gag order to his subordinates and used fast horses to submit as a report an empty envelope to the court. When the report reached the court, Wu Zong, the emperor who sent the eunuch, has died, and the succeeding emperor ordered the eunuch to return and be punished for his wrongdoing. End of story. This is an anticlimax, but it's actually a climax for the purpose of my talk. Because it means what? That's it? First of all, think of it this way. Why punish the eunuch? The eunuch didn't do anything that was really wrong, right? Follow orders and go and... who should be punished? The monk, right, who killed all these soldiers and who robbed all the gifts, right? But there's no mention. Okay, in this entire record, in the foreign records, there's no complaint. There was no any negative statement about this living Buddha. So do you think that the Ming government had any control over these people? I think it's pretty obvious. Okay. So oops, sorry. Pressed the wrong button. Okay. So we have just finished this. We were still talking about Ming, so we are talking about handling tributary envoys. Because again, I want to remind you, that is what the PLC white paper says. We have already shown you this part about the conferment of titles, about the fact that when you have these titles, it's supposed to be obedient. You can see that guy, the Karmapa, wasn't obedient at all, okay? But this one is about tributary, okay? Because what a patriotic Chinese then might, actually I should say national. I'm very patriotic. I'm just not nationalistic, okay? So I am using the wrong word over here. If you're a nationalistic Chinese, then you would say that, well, it doesn't matter, but they still had to submit tributes, right? I mean, bottom line is that they had to submit tributes and pay the Chinese government, okay? So that proves that the Chinese government, Ming Empire, had control over them, right? So that's the argument. But that's what the Chinese are taught. People like us, when we were young, that's how we were taught, okay? The Ming Code details stipulations that limit the dates of presenting tributes, the number of personnel. In other words, you are required, okay, once every 3 years to come and send 100 envoys or whatever and submit tributes to this. And then, of course, also the route to be taken, follow this route, okay? So doesn't it prove that, that China has some power with them? Okay, again, let me digress. Okay, most of you are not old enough, and I don't know whether but a few of them are probably my age. I don't know whether you watch old movies, American movies. I don't know if anybody has heard of an old American movie. The good, the ugly, the good, the bad. Oh, the good, the bad. Oh, you've seen that. I don't know whether you remember scene. For those of you who have not read it, and again, I'm not telling the exact story. The exact story is not important, but there's a scene that there's this outlaw. This is this crook that was greatly feared by the locals. And so one day, this crook, this outlaw, walked into this store and then told the storekeeper and say, I want this gun of a certain model. I don't know whether you remember the scene. Okay, I want this gun. So the storekeeper looked at this outlaw, this famous, notorious outlaw walking in the store. He was scared half to death. You want a gun? Okay, I'll give you a gun. So I said, okay, is this what you want? And then I said, okay. So the outlaw said, yeah, this is what I want. How much? So the storekeeper said, 200? No. 250? No. 300? No. Wait a minute, you think I'm being old and senile? I'm reversing the story. Why is he raising the price? You're asking for how much, right? No. 350? Okay. Then the storekeeper took out 350 and put it and said, here, this is it. Now you understand. Now you understand. You took it for granted that when this outlaw is asking for how much do I have to pay? No, it's how much you have to pay me so that I'll leave your store without killing you. Okay? Okay? Now this thing over here apparently is the same thing actually, okay? The PRC isn't really lying. It's just like the story over here. This is not a lower limit, it's an upper limit. And you can see it again from Ming history, how it's recorded, okay? Well, first of all, let's look at this table. According to this is even actually more, I've already shown you this thing, okay? This reference is what you call, again, a contemporaneous document. The Chinese, they have the official history. They also have these comprehensive references. The comprehensive references, again, they were compiled since the Tang Dynasty, okay? And this is a Great Ming Comprehensive Reference, which is, again, an imperially commissioned document. And then in this table, it shows you all the countries that submit tributaries. And then, of course, you have, to them, it's recorded that the Western foreigners, which is the Tibetans, they submit tributaries. But then, of course, also Malacca, Borneo, and Japan, and so forth. So these are all the countries that submit tributaries. So the fact that Tibet was submitting tributaries, okay, doesn't mean anything because so did Korea, and so did Japan and Vietnam, and so forth. But actually, the Tibetans were something special, okay? They submit tributaries in a very different way, and which, of course, most people don't know about it unless they read the official history. And so this is official history, okay? Ming history. If you go to scroll 331, remember, all these things about Tibet, they are recorded in the second to last scroll. I mean, they're so irrelevant, the second to last scroll. And then if you go to that page, okay, you can see this, okay? This is about one of the spiritual kings, the spiritual king of Chanhua Wang, okay? And then in 1465, please remember this number, again, because it'll come up later. The Ministry of Particle reported 30 years ago, only 30 to 40 tributary envoys came from this polity, okay, one of the spiritual kings in Tibet. Later, 10 times that number came. In the past years, the number increased by 100-fold. Now the tributary envoys have again arrived. We beg your majesty to instruct King Chanhua, okay, to conform to the old rules established in the 1370s. That is to submit tributes only once every 3 years. So it's not like you have to come every 3 years. It's the other way around. Don't come too often, okay, because you people are too expensive. And you know why it is expensive? Okay, let me digress a little bit. It can be shown that at that time, and again, you'll be surprised, but you can actually look at old records. Each envoy was made to believe that as long as you go to, and these envoys basically are, again, okay, these are monks, okay? Some of them are not even real monks, okay? They go to Beijing and they kowtow, okay? They knock their head on the floor. And you know how much they're given? Think about it. An upper middle class family in Germany or the United States today they make roughly about 150,000 US dollars. Okay? What they were giving each of these envoys, and that is very clearly recorded, okay, in the government documents, each of them is given the amount that is made by an upper middle or middle class family in the Ming Empire. To translate, it means that if the United States or if Germany were to announce to the world, for everyone that comes to my capital and kowtow to our leader, I will give you 150 US dollars. What do you think would happen? You have crowds trying to come in, okay? Which is exactly what's happening over here, is that they started out with 20 and 30 envoys, and it becomes 100, it becomes 300, because my goodness, all I have to do is to try to make the trek to Beijing, and I get, think about it, 150,000 US dollars, like today, okay? So, earlier it was 260, and then the border officials followed new rules and wanted to allow only 150 because that was a quota. The quota was not a lower limit, it was upper limit. You're not allowed to send more than 150. The Ministry of Particles felt that since the envoys had really entered the country, it's difficult to reject them. Hence, the ministry requested that following the wishes of the envoys, they would all be admitted, but be counted against the quotas of the next 2 tributes. In other words, okay, the next 6 years don't come anymore, okay, because you already used up your quota. And this was approved. In 1508, officials of the Ministry of Particle pointed out that a number of tributary envoys exceeded the limit and would be counted against the number of the next tribute. Okay? So it's exactly like the outlaw that I was talking about, is that, you're not talking about the outlaw paying you money, it's the other way around. Okay, so this is an explanation, okay, given in the Ming official history, which is called the Ming history. This is still the translation for Ming history, okay, which is official history. Submitting tributaries is profitable. Of course it's profitable. It's like giving, each person 150,000 US dollars. Therefore, although restrictions were repeatedly opposed, the rivals kept increasing. And then in 1569, the Ming court specified the following. And there's these spiritual kings, okay, in Tibet, shall all submit tributes once every 3 years. So that's what the PRCs use. The PRCs is there, you see? We require them to submit tributes once every 3 years, okay? Except that, well, they actually, the background meaning is not really what you think. The number of tributary envoys from each entity, each polity, each of these things, shall be 1,000, okay? You can't send more than 1,000. And every time they exceed 1,000, can you imagine? 1,000 people come into a country, kowtow to your emperor, each gets 150,000 US dollars, okay? Half of them will get full reward, and the other half will get a reduced reward. They get half a reward, actually. So half of them will get, okay? So out of 1,000, 500 will get the full 150,000 US dollars. The other will get 75,000 US dollars. Among those receiving full awards, 8 will be selected to proceed to the capital. They have basically a free trip, okay? Go and visit Beijing and look at the palace. The rest will remain at the border, okay? And this becomes the established practice. Now, this is a clean version. This is a clean version in the sense that it is written in the official history and it's to save face, okay? Now, remember I asked you to remember the number 1465, the Ministry of Particle reported. Okay, how was the original report? You would read the original report by the officer. It's even more amusing, okay? This is something that has been sort of beautified and cleansed for inclusion in the Ming history. So anyway, this is the guy that actually submitted the report. Again, I'm doing straight translation. Please don't throw tomatoes or eggs at me, okay? It's going to be insulting to the host over here. But, okay, this guy actually is Yao Kui, okay? Ranked first in the National Service Examination. Okay, there were only 6 ministries. A minister in Ming China is very much more senior than a minister of the British government or even a cabinet secretary of the United States of America, because there are only six ministries, okay? And this one is a Ministry of Particles and also a Ministry of Officialdom, okay? There are 6 ministries. So it's a very, very, very senior person. And then, again, it's a very prestigious person. Again, this is the way we decide whether a certain book or a certain person has credibility, okay? This person, okay, ranks first in the National Service Examination, senior minister. How do we know that? Again, it has a biography in the Ming history, okay? I mean, these are very, very, if you look at many of the documents that people, you look at the Bible, for example, and then there are all these books. Do you know who the authors are? Do you have independent sources to verify the background of these, okay? But over here, we have independent sources to verify the background of these authors. And then these important people, the writings are collected. So this one is, and then this is, again, included, digitized in Basic Classics, which is the database operated by the PLC. Okay, so PLC is providing this version of something that, again, the authenticity cannot be disputed. Okay? Let's see what they say. 1465 AD. Okay? Fan is a Tibetan, okay? There's a Chinese word, the Tibetan, the Ming Dynasty official words for the Tibetans. Fan monks and chieftains arriving as tributary envoys now number even more than the previous years. In the past several decades, the number has increased from 30 or 40 to 2,000 and 3,000. In the first 8 months of this year, we have received 15 batches totaling 3,070 individuals. We have already given awards to 1,038 individuals. 2,732 individuals have yet to receive the awards, have yet to be paid off. That's what it really means, okay? We have expanded, and later on, the choice of wording becomes even more interesting, by the way, as you will. Please note the wording. We have expanded so many blocks, okay, 188,400 blocks of silver, thousands of packages of fabric, because they have to give them not only silver, they have to give them, silk, they have to give them for making their monks' robes, okay? According to the Chinese, okay? And whether it's true or not, again, I'm only presenting to you historical records, okay? How you want to interpret these historical records is up to you to decide. So you can either believe it or not. But again, I'm telling you, okay, the system, how these records are kept and so forth, okay? Boots and accessories, so many kilos. We have no idea how many more are still to come, okay? We have no idea how many more, that we have to pay out, okay? The next page becomes more interesting. These envoys blatantly manifest their uncivilized character, disturb damaged postal stations, commit mayhem and murder, violently rape women and maidens, pardon me, okay, the straight translation, okay? And trade in smuggled tea. Some of them are robbers disguised as monks, in consideration of the audience over here, I've actually omitted some of these unsavory comments that are not very favorable to the Tibetan monks. Among them are hundreds of variations of deceptions and trickeries, and there are repeated law violations. At present, we have floods and droughts. Chinese people, livelihood is miserable. And it's difficult for them to support these expenses of paying off these monks. The Ministry of Works and other government offices have difficulty in meeting the demands of fabrics and boots. The expenses are huge, and the disturbances are frequent. If this is not handled properly, there will be inconvenience and consequences. This is a senior officer who passed his civil service examination, and he knows how to sort of use nice words, okay? So he says, okay, there are inconvenient consequences, okay? So it's a very nice way of putting it, okay? And then there's telling the emperor, okay, the central court is that we requested the imperial court to tell the Fan kings in Wusuzhang in Tibet to be ordered to counsel, okay? I purposely use this word because, okay, if you know Chinese, it's a very interesting word, okay? Counsel. First of all, you're complaining that these people come and rape your woman, okay? They're trickeries, okay? I mean, they commit mayhem and murder. And then you're asking their government, okay, their rulers to counsel them, how to counsel them. Not saying that I'm going to kick you people out. At least if you don't arrest them, at least kick them out, right? No. What it says is that since the distance to be traveled is great, if there are too many tributes, there will be too much expenses and effort. There are also impostors and criminals. It's advisable to follow the old regulations established in the it's 1370. There's no zero here. In the 1370, so as not to impose too much on other people. You think about it, okay? I mean, these people, according to your version, is that they come and rape, they come and rob, and they come and do whatever, and you're just telling them that don't come too often, okay? I mean, you're imposing too much on other people. Other people simply means, be considerate. And then the imperial decree says, yes, so order. Yeah, agreed. So you get a very different picture of what those tributaries mean, and whether these Tibetan submitting tributaries actually represent a submission to the Chinese Ming government. So that is the end of the Ming section. So I think I'll open a little bit up to questions. After that, we can, if you have time left, we can go into Ming, Qing, okay? And Qing, of course, will be longer, actually. So, any questions about the Ming?
Thank you, Professor. My only request to the questioners is please keep the questions brief so that more questions can be asked. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What relation would you be calling or recognize that Tibet and China have during the Ming Dynasty?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? My hearing isn't very good.
What relation will you recognize that Tibet and China have during Ming Dynasty?
I'm sorry.
What kind of relationship?
What kind of what?
What kind of relationship that Tibet and China had during the Ming Dynasty, as per your result or research?
Well, if you look at these, anybody who has read the Ming history, which I have, I am proud to say that, and to read these other documents, like the original, the collected works of all these, prime ministers and ministers and so forth, my subjective interpretation is that again, please pardon me, okay? And what I say might not be very complimenting to Tibetans and certainly not to Tibetan monks. But at that time, I think it's well recognized, and it's the American scholars and the European scholars recognize that too, is that at that time, Ming Dynasty culturally and economically was way above everybody else, okay? It was way above Germany and those places. The Germans think of the Ming Empire as the ideal place where people are civilized. The nobles, the aristocrats are created not because your parents fought in a war, but because you passed the civil service examination. It was a unique thing, okay? It was a unique thing in the entire world, okay? In all the other countries, how do you become aristocrats? Because your grandfather killed a lot of people in the war, okay? But these are just one of the examples, okay? They were so rich they accounted for more than half of the world GDP, okay? So the Ming Emperor was, and this is official, the Ming Emperor basically had this idea that's called Ho Wang Bo Lai. In other words, we get very little from them, from these tributary envoys, and we want to make sure that these people don't get the wrong idea that we want your wealth. We are so rich, okay, that your wealth is just pitiful. We are going to return a lot of gifts to you, okay, to show them our benevolence. Okay, this is official policy of the Chinese government. Okay, it's called Ho Wang Bo Lai. Okay, and so they do it to all the countries, but then some countries they only do it just to show off because they're just so rich. Okay, and so to places like the Philippines and Malacca and the Ryukyu Island, which is Okinawa. To the Tibetans, there's also another reason, is that honestly, to the Chinese, the Tibetans have always been troublemakers, okay? And they discovered that the Tibetans are very obedient, or they believe in the monks, the lamas, okay? So they figured that the cheapest way, instead of having wars, okay, instead of sending people and lose their lives, is that they would just pay them a huge sum of money to these lamas and hope that these lamas will go back, okay, and control the people. And apparently it worked, because if you read the Ming history, the official history, and all the other books, you see that there were no major wars. And apparently the lamas, after receiving each $150,000 US, okay, they were able to. That's my subjective interpretation as a Han Chinese who have read Chinese records. Okay, but that's very subjective.
Excuse me. But we could also say that there was some kind of, spiritual contest going on between the Tibetans and the Chinese.
Yes, some of these emperors were
You know,
Buddhists.
the ethnic kind of assertion probably going on at that time, or a civilizational difference. Uh, can you throw some light on that?
No, actually, I would like to, just to add on to what you have said, there's another factor that I forgot, and that this is very important.
The whole question of identity at that time, the Tibetan identity and the Chinese identity.
Honestly, I don't think it's an identity issue because my perception is that the Chinese look down on everybody. Okay, it's like an equal opportunity discriminator. Okay, and I don't think they are interested in the Tibetan culture or Tibetan identity. At the same time, I'm not sure the Tibetans are that interested in the Chinese culture anyway. Okay, but actually, it's the other way around. Is that even though the Chinese educated class, the Mandarins, okay, they have most of them, they have very little interest in Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism. The emperors, for some reason, many of the emperors, they were very interested in Tibetan Buddhism. And so the previous story actually showed you that, right? They spent so much money in sending the eunuch to try to bring the living Buddha to Beijing under the very severe protest of all his senior officers. So that is another reason I think that characterized that kind of relationship is that some emperors would just give them a lot of money. In the long run, the Mandarins also felt that, okay, fine, because that means that they don't send, whatever small troops or whatever to disturb the borders. But in my humble opinion, I don't think there was any issue about cultural identity or whatever. There was actually none. Okay. Actually, there are a lot of other interesting stories that I haven't shown. Okay, I mean,
no spiritual contestation.
Well, if you're talking about spiritual, cultural thing, the only thing that I think would be a factor would be that, as I've said, the emperors, some of them were interested in Buddhism. All the Mandarins, well, because the Mandarins were brought up in the Confucianism school, right? And the Confucianism is really not really in good terms with Buddhism. Okay, I mean, there are very fundamental contradictions. And these Mandarins, okay, who were educated under Confucianism, they are against Buddhism. And of course, they also feel that it's just a waste of money. I mean, you think about it. Because I haven't shown you the other story. The other story is about all these Tibetan monks that come in, and then they get these honorific titles. And that is not it. They get a lot of money. You see, an envoy who comes in gets equivalent of 150,000 US dollars. When a real monk comes in, they get millions of dollars. Okay, so you have these Mandarins, okay, who are saying, look, we spent 20 years studying for the civil examination, and after we pass the civil examination, we become a lowly officer at the 9th rank. Okay, the 9th rank. Okay, in the Chinese civil system. Eventually, we'll get to the 7th and the 6th rank. Okay, and then the whole year, my salary is much less than what this monk gets when he visits the emperor. So that's something, you can see that, okay? There's jealousy. Is that, well, I don't know whether it's jealousy. It's a matter of why are you wasting all this money on the monks? And if you're talking about the ruling class, the rulers being obsessed with religious figures, monks, and that is true not only in China. I mean, if you remember what happens in Christianity, again, I'm saying this, okay, and I hope I'm not offending the monks over here, but you have many cultures the same thing. The kings and the queens, okay, they become very, very submissive to religious figures, and then the officers are against it. You have one Ming emperor that invited a lot of the monks, okay, and they slept together in the palatial bedroom, and then the officer was saying that this is not right, okay, this looks really bad, okay. All these are recorded in the official history. Which again, this is why I think that there's an indication that these official histories are believable, because, I mean, these are scandals. I mean, they're not very honorable things, okay? I mean, if they were not honest, they wouldn't be writing these things. Okay? So, you know about in Russia, anybody knows about Rasputin? No? So that's an example. Again, I'm trying to be very frank over here, okay? I mean, we're talking about real world over here, okay? There are all kinds of, there are the good things, there are bad things, okay? I'm just showing you what the record said. And if you ask me, I'll tell you my subjective interpretation, but these are all subjective. What I encourage you is just to look at the actual records and then make up your own mind. And of course, it'll be difficult because if you can't read the Chinese original, you need to read the whole thing. And what the PRC has been doing is to pick out a few sentences, like that thing about, yeah, you are required to send in 1,000 envoys, okay? Without realizing that 1,000 is not the lower limit, but the upper limit. You need to read the whole passage. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry, actually, I'm unable to answer your question because I don't know enough. Okay, I don't think anybody knows enough. But you can see that these Chinese records do reveal a lot of things that are surprising to most people who were brought up with the high school textbooks. And also, you see a lot of dirty linens and a lot of, it reflects human nature. Just like the Chinese encyclopedia that gives you a recipe for aphrodisiac. Okay, many Chinese will be shocked. They say, "What? We teach people how to write love letters to homosexuals?" Huh?
Thank you, Professor. It was very interesting talk. I have two very specific questions. One, you were talking about YE, YE.
Yeah.
So in that context, I think there were Tungi, Pei, Shi, all that. So if I see from that perspective, do you see the whole of other areas as foreign during the Ming Dynasty, in the sense that Pei, 或者是 Nani, and all these account to independent countries or not? The second question is also related to this, is that when you're talking about the Ming Dynasty, and we are really concerned in India over the revival of the Silk Route, which again date back to the Ming Dynasty. And when we are talking about the Silk Route, which actually goes from the Tibetan areas where the trading of tea and horses were done, could you throw light about how that kind of relationship was existing, which is again interested for most of the people out here? Thank you.
I don't think I have expertise in both. Could you repeat the first question? What was the first question?
I was saying that you was talking about Tungi and Pei, like you were talking about the,
Now that one,
Xinjiang,
I think
Mongolia, all these
the
areas.
answer is pretty obvious to me. Yi simply means foreigners, okay? They are not Chinese, okay? Yi Di, okay? And then if you look at the membership of these groups, again, it confirms, Japan and Vietnam, okay? They are foreign countries, okay? There are other places where China very clearly state that these countries, are not part of us, okay? Now, however, just like today, in the United States, okay, you have more influence in Afghanistan, you have more influence in Haiti, and you have less influence in Russia. But simply because the United States, they have more influence in Iraq, because they have soldiers there, okay? And they have more influence in Afghanistan, and they have less influence in Russia, for example, or even less influence in India. It doesn't mean that Afghanistan is part of the United States. So at that time, okay, on one hand, you do have this explicitly labeled Yi, which foreigners, okay? And some countries, they have closer relationship, including, for example, the Tibetans who come and collect $150,000 each. But actually, if you look at the Ming history, you see there are even closer relationships with Vietnam, and certainly with Thailand, and certainly with Okinawa and those places, okay? But the nature is different. Again, I'm sorry. The Tibetans are the ones that extorted the largest amount of money from the Ming emperor. No country, no polity compares to the Tibetan monks in terms of getting money, okay? But when it comes to culture, then it's very, because the Chinese, they have official schools, okay? They have these official schools, and they record, polities, okay, political entities that send students, okay? You have Okinawa, even you have by the time of the Qing Dynasty, you even have Russians sending students to these Chinese schools in Beijing, okay, to learn Chinese and whatever. The Tibet polities never send anybody, nobody. So if you measure relationship, there are different kinds of relationship, but certainly when it comes to cultural, that's very good.
In 14th century, it corresponds to Ming Dynasty. 14th century.
Yeah, it's 1369, no, 1279到1368 1279 to 1368. I have to recite this in Chinese before I convert it in English.
Yeah, 13 is 14th century.
Yeah.
So in 14th century, there's a great Tibetan scholar by the name Lama Tsongkhapa.
What? Yeah.
Did you come across any material documents pertaining to him?
Yes.
So one
but
thing,
you see, but it's like
just
that.
for that matter, the point is that he was invited by the emperor, Chinese emperor, and he declined.
Yeah.
He declined to come there himself.
Yeah.
Instead, he sent one of his students there. Is there any record of that?
Yeah, okay. It's like that. First of all, you're talking about the names. Because, for example, let me go back to this great precious great precious religious king that I say is a Karmapa. Okay, that was to the Chinese. It's more recent research that sort of linked the Karmapa with the Daba Fa, is the grand precious. Now, in the Chinese terms, they don't know anything about the Karmapa. They call it by different names, except that we now know that it is the same thing. You're talking about the Zhongguba, I think, okay, first of all, it's like that. When you're talking about Chinese history, are you talking about Ming era writings or Qing era writings on Ming, or are you talking about Qing history written by the PRC? Okay, now, the much clearer one is the Dalai Lama. Okay, if you read the Ming history that's written by the Qing scholars, there's actually no mention in the Ming history about Dalai Lama. But it's mentioned in the it's mentioned in the Ming veritable records. The Ming veritable records has records about the Ming government giving honorific titles to this so-called, and then they have a very strange way of translating the term Dalai, because they have no idea who these people are, okay? In fact, according to the Ming records, is that the Mongolia princes told the Ming court that this monk that we revered and respect very much, I want you to give them a title and then to show your respect. Okay? And apparently the Ming court received this request from the Ming prince, who just formed an alliance with the China and say, okay, we'll just give him a title. So they gave him a title which is the lowest rank of all the monks in China. Okay, it's called Jie Yi Chan Shi. Okay, they're ninth grade in the government service, and Jie Yi Chan Shi was the second lowest. It's like the 8th grade. So they gave an 8th grade title to this Dalai, and it simply records, we give this to this guy with the name of Dalai. They have no idea who this guy is. And after some years, the Mongolians discovered that no, you can't give Dalai Lama this 8th grade thing, And then they say that they want the Ming Empire to give them Dorje Chang, okay? And the Ming Empire had no idea what Dorje Chang is, okay? They said, okay, if you want Dorje Chang, okay. The Ming Empire was saying that if you want a Chinese title, we cannot be too generous to you. Which, by the way, is very different from 200 years ago at the beginning of the Ming Dynasty, okay? They would give it, look at this Karmapa, okay? But by the time of this Dalai Lama is supposed to end. By that time, the Ming emperors, most of them, they have lost interest in Buddhism, okay? So they were just giving these titles just for the sake of diplomacy. So what they're saying is that if you want Chinese titles, we have to be stingy, okay? We can't give you high titles. But if you want a non-Chinese title, I don't care what you call them, a Doge, Chang, whatever, who knows what these things are. So they had this thing that says, okay, we have now promoted this Dalai from Chan Shi, the 8th grade, to Judge Chang. Okay? In other words, you can see that they have no idea what these people are. Okay? Now, then later on, if you want to read what the Chinese know about at that time, how the Gelugpa sect, okay, became powerful, you have to read the Qing history, which is written by the people in the Republic of China. Okay? Then, of course, they tell the whole thing about how this, Zhonggeba and so forth, but it was like looking backwards. During Ming Dynasty, they know nothing. And again, if you look at the maps, I think it's pretty clear that by that time, the Ming Dynasty has lost interest in Tibet, and it was just a matter of just pacifying them. Don't come and trouble us. It's not like the early emperors. The early emperors, I've said, many of them, they were very interested in Buddhism. So Zhonggeba was not known in the Ming documents.
Thank everybody for being so patient, being here, asking very, very intelligent questions. And most important thing about Professor Lau is that there is humor and rigorous research, because what you saw today is rigorous research over a lifetime. And that is why I salute you on behalf of everybody here. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. Well, thank you again. Good night. I hope I'll see you again tomorrow.